The fever came without warning on a cold morning when the 3 moons of still hung low in the purple sky. Had been running through the stone corridors of the great den just the day before, chasing his older siblings and laughing in the sharp barking way that cubs do. Now he lay on a pile of soft furs, his small body shaking, his golden eyes clouded with pain. Pack Leader stood over his youngest son and felt something he had not felt in many cycles. He felt fear. The great wolf-like leader of the largest clan on had faced enemies in battle, had survived assassination attempts, had led his people through famine and war. But watching his 6-cycle-old cub struggle to breathe made his hearts pound in a way no enemy ever could. Healer pressed her furred hand against the cub's forehead and pulled it back quickly. The heat was intense, far beyond normal fever. She had served the clan for 40 cycles and had seen many illnesses come and go. But this one was different. This one scared her. "What is wrong with him?" demanded, his deep voice echoing off the ancient stone walls. Shook her head slowly. "I have checked everything, Pack Leader. I have given him the cooling herbs. I have used the blood-cleansing ritual. Nothing works. The fever keeps rising." "Then find something that does work," growled. His claws scraped against the floor as he paced back and forth. "You are the healer, heal him." "I am trying," said quietly. She reached into her medicine pouch and pulled out a small scanner, one of the few pieces of advanced technology they used. She passed it over his trembling body and studied the results. Her eyes went wide. "What?" Stepped closer. "What do you see?" "This cannot be right," ran the scan again. The results were the same. "Pack Leader, the scanner says this is hollow rot." Went still. Every knew that name. Hollow rot was a disease from the old stories, from the time before the clans united, from the dark cycles when died by the thousands. It had been wiped out generations ago. No one alive had ever seen a case of it. "That is impossible," said. "I know, but the scanner does not lie." Looked down at the suffering cub. "Hollow rot attacks from within. It burns through the body like fire through dry grass. In the old times there was no cure. The sick either survived on their own strength or they did not. There must be something in the old records, some treatment we have forgotten. I have already searched. The records say only that the disease disappeared on its own. No cure was ever found because the illness vanished before our ancestors could discover one." Wanted to roar, to break something, to fight this enemy that he could not see or touch. But he was Pack Leader. He had to remain strong, even when his soul was crumbling inside. He knelt beside his son and placed his large hand gently on the cub's chest. "Fight, little one," he whispered. "You are my blood, you are fight." Whimpered softly, but did not open his eyes. In another part of the den, Myra watched through a doorway. She was mother to his cubs, and she had never seen her strong husband look so helpless. She had also never felt so desperate. Her baby was dying, and the healers had no answers. Her husband's pride would not let him seek outside help. They were warriors. They solved their own problems. They did not beg other species for assistance. But Myra was a mother first and a second. She slipped away from the healing chamber and made her way through the winding tunnels to a small communication room. The equipment here was old but functional. It could reach the human outpost that sat at the edge of territory, a small diplomatic station that the clan tolerated but did not welcome. Myra had never spoken to a human. She had only seen them from a distance, small and soft and hairless, nothing like the proud. Most of her people thought humans were weak, barely worth noticing. But Myra had heard stories. She had heard that humans had strange knowledge, that they had survived on a dangerous world full of predators and diseases, that they had ways of healing that other species found primitive but effective. She did not know if any of it was true, but she was out of options. Her clawed fingers fumbled with the controls as she composed a short message. She kept it simple. She explained that a cub was dying of an unknown fever. She asked if any human healer would be willing to help. She did not mention that the cub belonged to the Pack Leader. She did not want to make this a political matter. She just wanted someone to save her son. She sent the message and waited. 30 minutes later, a reply came. A human named a field medic at the outpost had received the message. She was willing to come. She would arrive within 2 hours. Myra deleted the communication records and returned to the healing chamber. She said nothing to her husband. She would deal with his anger later. For now, she had done what any mother would do. The sun was setting when the guards at the outer entrance sent word that a human vehicle was approaching. Was confused. No humans had been invited. No humans had any business being here. He ordered the guards to stop the vehicle and find out what the stranger wanted. Stepped out of her small transport and looked up at the guards. They towered over her, each one standing nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick and brown fur, with sharp teeth and sharper claws. Any sensible person would have been terrified. Simply smiled. "Hello," she said. "I am a medic. I received a message that a child here is very sick. I am here to help." The guards looked at each other. They had received no orders about this. One of them went to inform the pack leader, while the others kept their weapons trained on the small human woman. Waited patiently. She had brought her medical bag, filled with supplies and knowledge passed down through generations of human healers. She did not know if she could help. She did not know if they would even let her try. But a child was dying, and that was all that mattered. When received the news, his first instinct was to send the human away. But then he saw Myra's face, and he understood. His mate had done this. She had called for outside help without his permission. He should have been furious. Instead, he found himself walking toward the entrance, his heart heavy with a desperate hope he was afraid to feel. The guards brought through the stone tunnels of the great den. She had to walk quickly to keep up with their long strides, but she did not complain. She was too busy studying everything around her. The walls were covered with carvings that told stories of hunts and battles and great leaders of the past. Torches burned in holders made of polished bone. The air smelled of smoke and animal fur and something sharp that might have been medicine. They entered a large chamber where dozens of had gathered. All of them stared at the small human with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. Kept her head high and her hands visible. She wanted them to see that she carried no weapons, only her medical bag. At the far end of the chamber, sitting on a raised platform carved from black stone, was the largest she had ever seen. His fur was dark streaked with silver, and his eyes burned like golden fire. A terrible scar ran down the left side of his face, crossing over a milky blind eye. This could only be the pack leader. Studied the human for a long moment. She was small, barely reaching his chest even if she stretched. Her skin was pale and smooth, without fur to protect it. Her body looked soft, with none of the muscle that warriors developed from childhood. By every measure his people used, she was weak. And yet she stood before him without trembling. That was interesting. "Who sent for you?" demanded. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "I received a distress message," said calmly. "It said a child was dying of fever. I am a medic. I came to help." "We did not ask for human help." "Someone did, and I am here now." Took a step forward. The guards moved to stop her, but she held up her hands. "Pack leader, I mean no disrespect to you or your people. I know they are proud and strong. But I also know that a sick child does not care about pride. A sick child only wants the pain to stop." His jaw tightened. This human was bold, perhaps too bold. "Our healers are handling the matter," he said. From the corner of the room, healer spoke up. "Pack leader, with respect, I have tried everything. The cub grows weaker by the hour. Perhaps we should let the human examine him. What harm could it do?" Looked at his old healer, then at his mate standing silently near the doorway. Myra's eyes were red from crying. She said nothing, but her face begged him to allow this. He turned back to the human. "If I let you see my son and you cannot help him, what then?" "Then at least we will have tried," said simply. "And if he dies because of something you do?" met his gaze without flinching. "Then I will accept whatever punishment you decide, but I did not come here to fail. I came here to save a life." A murmur ran through the gathered. No one spoke to the pack leader this way. No one made promises so boldly. Either this human was very brave or very foolish. Stood and walked down from his platform. He stopped directly in front of, towering over her like a mountain of fur and muscle. She had to tilt her head back to look at his face. "Follow me," he said. He led her through more tunnels to a smaller chamber where lay on his bed of furs. The cub looked even worse than before. His breathing was shallow and fast. His fur was soaked with sweat. Every few seconds his body would shake with violent shivers. Knelt beside him and opened her medical bag. She pulled out a small device and pressed it gently against the cub's neck. Numbers and readings appeared on a tiny screen. She studied them carefully. "How long has he been like this?" she asked. "Since this morning," Myra answered. She had followed them into the room and now stood close by, her hands clasped together tightly. "Has he eaten or drunk anything?" "He cannot keep anything down. We tried to give him water, but he just brings it back up." Nodded and continued her examination. She checked the cub's eyes, his mouth, his paws. She listened to his chest with an old-fashioned device that had two tubes connected to a circular piece of metal. The watched her with confusion. What kind of primitive tool was that? After several minutes, sat back on her heels. Her expression was thoughtful. "Your healer said this is something called hollow rot," she said. "A disease from long ago that was supposed to be gone." "That is correct," confirmed. "There is no known cure." "Maybe not for your people," reached into her bag and pulled out a small tablet device. She scrolled through pages of text and images. "Humans have a long history of fighting diseases. We did not always have advanced technology. For most of our existence, we had to use what nature gave us. Plants, minerals, simple techniques. You think your primitive methods can succeed where our medicine has failed?" Sounded offended. "I think the symptoms I am seeing are very similar to something humans dealt with centuries ago on Earth. We called it by different names depending on where it appeared, but the treatment was often the same." Looked up at. "I need certain things. Clean water, lots of it. Cloths that can be soaked and placed on his body. And I need to know what plants grow in this region. There may be something here that has the properties I need." Hesitated. This was madness. Trusting his son's life to a human and her ancient Earth remedies. But what choice did he have? Was dying. Every passing moment brought him closer to death. "Give her what she needs," he ordered. Myra rushed to gather supplies. Began listing the local plants that grew near the den. Listened carefully, asking questions about each one, making notes on her tablet. As the night began, prepared to fight for a child's life using knowledge that humans had carried for thousands of years. She did not know if it would work, but she knew she had to try. Watch from the shadows, his blind eye turned toward the wall, his good eye fixed on the human who held his son's fate in her small, soft hands. The healing chamber became a place of strange activity as the night wore on. Worked without rest, her hands moving with practiced skill as she prepared treatments that they had never seen before. Myra brought buckets of cold water from the underground streams. Servants carried in armfuls of soft cloths, and Healer watched everything with a mixture of doubt and desperate hope. The first thing did was strip away the heavy furs that covered small body. They gasped at this. When someone was sick with fever, you kept them warm. Everyone knew that, but shook her head. "The fever is cooking him from the inside," she explained as she worked. "His body is trying to fight the sickness by raising its temperature, but it has gone too high. We need to bring it down before it damages his brain." She soaked the cloths in cold water and placed them on his forehead, his chest, under his arms, and on his legs. The cub whimpered at the sudden cold, but he was too weak to pull away. Kept replacing the cloths as they warmed up, maintaining a constant cooling effect. "This is your ancient medicine?" asked. "Wet cloths?" "This is the beginning," said. "On Earth, we call this technique hydrotherapy, using water to control body temperature. It has been done for thousands of years. Before we had machines and pills, we had water and patience." Had not left the chamber. He stood against the wall, watching everything. His claws dug into the stone as he struggled to stay calm. Part of him wanted to push the human aside and demand that real medicine be used. But another part of him saw how carefully she worked, how gently she touched his son, and that part kept him silent. As the hours passed, moved to the next phase of her treatment. She had spent time with going through the local plants, and she had found something promising. A small weed that grew everywhere on and that they considered worthless. They called it dust root because it seemed to grow only in dry, dusty places. "This plant," said, holding up a handful of the dried leaves, "has properties very similar to something that grows on Earth. We call it willow bark. For centuries, humans used it to reduce fever and ease pain. Later, our scientists figured out why it worked and made a stronger version. But the natural form still helps." "You want to give my son weeds?" The voice was low and dangerous. "I want to give your son medicine that nature provides." Began crushing the leaves in a small bowl. Pack leader, humans survived for a very long time without advanced technology. We faced diseases that killed millions. We learned to use every tool available to us, even the ones that seemed too simple to matter. She added hot water to the crushed leaves and let them soak. The liquid turned a pale brown color. When it had cooled enough, she carefully lifted its head and trickled small amounts into his mouth. "He needs to swallow as much as possible," she said. "This will help his body stop fighting so hard. It will let him rest." Myra helped hold her son while gave him the mixture. Most of it dribbled out of his mouth, but some went down. They repeated this every few minutes, patient and careful. Between doses, talked. She told them about Earth, about how humans had evolved on a world full of dangers, predators that hunted them, whether that tried to kill them, diseases that swept through villages and cities alike. And through all of it, humans had survived. "We are not strong like," she admitted. "We cannot run as fast or fight as well with our bare hands, but we learned to think, to adapt, to use what we had. When sickness came, we watched and experimented. We tried things that sometimes worked and sometimes did not. Over many generations, we built up knowledge. We passed it down from parent to child, from teacher to student." "Your people sound stubborn," said. Smiled. "We are very stubborn. We refuse to give up, even when giving up would be easier." Looked at the small human woman with new respect. Perhaps there was more to these soft creatures than she had believed. As the middle of the night approached, checked condition again. The fever had dropped slightly. Not much, but enough to give hope. The cold compresses and the dust root mixture were having some effect. But it was not enough. Could see that the infection was still spreading inside the cub's body. The fever would rise again if she did not find a way to fight the disease directly. She went back to her notes and to her conversations with about local plants. There had to be something else, something that could attack the sickness at its source. On Earth, humans had discovered that certain molds and fungi could kill infections. That discovery had changed everything. It had saved countless lives. "Are there any molds or fungi that grow in your caves?" asked suddenly. Tilted her head. "There is something in the deep tunnels, a blue growth on the rocks. We avoid it because it smells bad. Can you get me some?" The old healer hesitated, then nodded. She sent a young running to fetch a sample. Did not know if it would work. She did not know if this alien mold would have the same properties as Earth penicillium, but she had to try. A child's life depended on her willingness to take chances. She looked at, still shaking with fever, still fighting to breathe. "Hold on, little one," she whispered. "We are not done yet." Heard her words. He watched as this strange human woman refused to give up on his son. And for the first time in his life, the great pack leader began to wonder if strength meant something different than he had always believed. The young returned with a container of blue mold scraped from the deep tunnel walls. It smelled like rotting fruit and wet earth, and everyone in the healing chamber wrinkled their noses at the stench, but took the container with eager hands and immediately began examining the growth. She used her medical scanner to analyze it. The readings showed complex chemical compounds, some similar to antibiotics found on Earth and some completely unknown. It was a risk. She could not be certain this substance would help and not harm, but his condition was getting worse. Without something stronger, he would not survive until morning. "I need to prepare this carefully," said. "If I give too much, it could hurt him. If I give too little, it will not help." She worked with intense focus, separating parts of the mold, mixing small amounts with water, testing and adjusting. Watched every step, making notes on her own tablet. The old healer had spent her life studying medicine. Now she was learning something entirely new, and despite her earlier doubts, she found herself fascinated. "Your people developed this knowledge through trial and error?" asked. "Yes, many humans died while we were learning. Many treatments that seemed promising turned out to be poison, but we kept trying, kept recording what worked and what did not. Eventually, we understood enough to save more lives than we lost. That is a hard way to learn." It was the only way we had. Held up a small vial of pale blue liquid. "This is ready, I hope." She knelt beside and lifted his head gently. Myra stood close by, her claws digging into her palms hard enough to draw blood. Had not moved from his place against the wall, but his entire body was tense, ready to spring forward. Trickled the liquid into the cub's mouth, a tiny amount at a time. Swallowed weakly. When the vial was empty, she laid him back down and began the waiting. The night stretched on, long and heavy with fear. No one slept. No one left. The entire clan seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see if their leader's son would live or die. Never stopped working. She continued the cold compresses to manage the fever. She gave more dust root mixture every hour. She checked vital signs again and again. And between tasks, she talked quietly to Myra, who had settled on the floor beside her son's bed. "You sent the message," said. "It was not a question." Myra nodded slowly. "My husband will be angry. He does not like asking for help, especially from outsiders." "But you did it anyway." "He is my cub." Myra's voice broke slightly. "I carried him inside me. I fed him from my body. I watched him take his first steps and heard him say his first words. I cannot watch him die without trying everything possible to save him." "That is something humans understand very well," said. "On Earth, we have a saying, a mother's love knows no boundaries. We say something similar, a mother's heart has no walls." They sat in silence for a while, two females from different species sharing the same fear, the same hope. Watched them from the shadows. He had heard their conversation. He had heard his mate admit what she had done, and to his own surprise, he was not angry. How could he be angry at someone for loving their child too much? The hours crawled past. The torches burned low and were replaced. The sounds of the den changed as the night deepened, growing quieter, more still. Near dawn, something changed. Noticed it first. Breathing had slowed. For a terrible moment, she thought he was dying. But then she checked his pulse and found it stronger than before. She touched his forehead and felt that the burning heat had finally begun to fade. "His fever is going down," she announced, her voice tight with cautious hope. "Really going down this time. His body is winning the fight." Myra let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. She grabbed her son's paw and held it tightly. Pushed away from the wall and approached. He looked at his son, at the color slowly returning to the cub's fur, at the easing of pain in his small face. Then he looked at. "You did this," he said. "You and your ancient medicine." "I helped, but your son did the fighting. He is strong pack leader, he has blood." As if hearing his name stirred. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then slowly clearing. He saw his mother and reached for her weakly. Myra gathered him into her arms, crying openly now, not caring who saw. Then's eyes found the strange creature kneeling beside his bed, the small, furless being with the soft hands and the tired smile. "Who are you?" the cub asked in a small voice. "My name is I am a friend." Seemed to accept this. He turned his face into his mother's chest and let out a long, peaceful sigh. Within moments, he was sleeping properly for the first time since the sickness began. Sat back on her heels and let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for hours. Her entire body ached with exhaustion, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from doing something that mattered. Stood over her, his massive form blocking the torchlight. His expression was unreadable. "You saved my son," he said. "I did what I was trained to do." "No," the pack leader shook his head slowly. "You did more than that. You came into danger without being forced. You worked through the night without rest. You treated my child as if he were your own." He paused. "I owe you a debt that cannot easily be repaid." Looked up at the great warrior, the feared leader, the proud who had never asked anyone for anything, and she saw something in his golden eye that looked almost like tears. "Let him live a good life," she said. "That will be payment enough." The days that followed were filled with wonder and change. Recovered quickly, as young ones often do once the danger has passed. Within 3 days, he was sitting up and eating. Within a week, he was walking around the den, weak but growing stronger. The entire clan watched his progress with joy and amazement. Word spread through the settlement about what had happened. The pack leader's cub had been dying of an ancient disease that no healer could cure, and a human, a small soft creature from a distant world, had saved him using nothing but simple remedies and stubborn determination. Some found this hard to believe. Others found it hard to accept, but none could deny the truth of it when they saw running and playing again. Stayed at the den during the recovery period. Had insisted, saying that she must rest before making the journey back to her outpost, but she suspected he had other reasons for keeping her there. Every day, different would find excuses to visit the chamber where she slept. They would peek in at her, studying her like she was some exotic creature, whispering among themselves. On the 7th day, called a formal gathering of the clan. Everyone assembled in the great hall, hundreds of standing in rows before their leader's platform. Was brought to stand at the front, feeling very small and very alone among all those towering figures. Raised his hand for silence. The hall went quiet immediately. "You all know why we are here," he began, his deep voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You all know what happened to my son and who saved his life." He looked down at. "This human came to us when she did not have to. She offered help when we had not asked for it. She worked through the night, using knowledge that her people have carried for thousands of years, and because of her, my son is alive." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nodded, some still looked uncertain. "I have always taught that they are strong," continued, "that we need no one, that we stand alone against the galaxy. This is what my father taught me and his father before him." He paused. "But I have learned something new. True strength is not about being alone. True strength is knowing when you need help and being wise enough to accept it when it comes." He stepped down from his platform and walked to where stood. When he reached her, he did something that made the entire hall gasp. He dropped to one knee, bringing his great head level with hers. He said formally, "I offer you the highest honor I can give to an outsider. From this day forward, you are a friend of the pack. You are welcome in our territory, at our tables, in our homes. Any who harm you will answer to me." Felt her eyes growing wet. She had not expected this. She had only done what any medic would do, but she could see how much this gesture cost the proud leader, how difficult it was for him to bend before his people. She bowed her head in respect. "I accept this honor," she said, "and I thank you for it." Rose and turned to face Healer. "Old friend, we nearly lost my son because our medicine had no answer for his sickness. I do not want that to happen again. I am asking you to work with this human to learn what she knows, to add her ancient wisdom to our own. Stepped forward. A week ago, she might have refused. A week ago, she might have seen this as an insult to her skills. But she had watched work, had seen the results of that work, and her pride had given way to curiosity. I would be honored to learn from her, said. Smiled, and I would be honored to teach you, but perhaps we can learn from each other. Your knowledge of local plants helped me find the treatments I needed. Together, we might discover things that neither of us could find alone. The gathering ended with something that had never happened before in the history of the clan. Warriors lined up to touch hand, a gesture of respect usually reserved for heroes of battle. Some were awkward about it, unsure how to interact with a human. Others were genuinely warm, thanking her for saving the cub they all loved. When it was time for to leave, came to say goodbye. The young cub looked healthy now, his fur glossy, his eyes bright with life. He carried something in his small paws, a carving made from dark wood. I made this for you, he said shyly. My father helped me. Took the carving and looked at it. It showed two figures standing together, one tall with pointed ears, one small and smooth. And a human. This is beautiful, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I will keep it forever. Surprised her by throwing his arms around her legs in a tight hug. He was too short to reach any higher. Knelt down and hugged him back properly. Watched this moment and felt something shifting inside him. All his life, he had believed that humans were weak, unimportant, not worth considering. Now he saw the truth. Strength came in many forms. Sometimes it came from muscles and claws. Sometimes it came from knowledge and compassion. And sometimes it came from a willingness to help a stranger when everyone else had given up hope. Safe travels, the pack leader said as walked toward her transport, and know that you will always have a place among us. Turned and raised her hand in farewell. Then she climbed into her vehicle and disappeared over the horizon. 6 months later, a diplomatic vessel arrived at the human outpost. It carried official documents requesting formal relations between the clans and the Human Federation. It also carried Healer, who had come to spend a year studying at human medical facilities. And it carried a message from to be delivered to personally. The message was short, just a single line written in careful script. It read, "We have changed our word for healer. It now means one who cares enough to try." Read the message and smiled. Then she pinned it to the wall above her desk, next to the wooden carving of and a human standing side by side. Sometimes the biggest changes begin with the smallest acts of kindness. Sometimes all it takes to bridge the gap between worlds is one person willing to show up when they are needed, armed with nothing but old knowledge and a stubborn refusal to give up. Sometimes that is the most human thing of all.